Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone on this Friday evening. Well, it's evening-ish, I guess. I don't know. When does evening technically start? Because it's only 5 p.m. Eastern here. Does evening start at 5 or 6? Anyway, unless you're in my time zone and you're maybe further out west, it's not evening. So welcome time of day Friday, everyone. Oh. Thank you, Looney Tunes 9000, for occupying the Sandbox. Please let me know. The same old, same old. Everything sounding okay? Everything looking okay? Yeah, I have a lot to go over today. Some of it is just kind of updates on things I covered in my last news stream. Things are just kind of people are going crazy. Like they're I feel like I'm going crazy because other people are going crazy for all the wrong reasons. It's yeah, I don't I see what's happening in the world. I see what's happening, like especially over what's happening in Gaza and stuff like that. And I still can't wrap my head around how everyone is freaking out at the people pointing out the atrocities happening. I don't get that. So we have a little bit of that to go over. Please forgive my voice. I have a bit of a cough. And I've been feeling a bit lightheaded today. I think I'm coming down with a cold. I took a COVID test earlier today and it was negative, but I'll take another one tomorrow morning just to see, because I might be one of the people who have a legit summer cold, which is still not great. It's part of the reason why I like wearing masks all the time when I'm out in public is, like, especially when I worked in an office, whenever there was that office bug going around, I would catch it. Like, my immune system, like I am just a magnet for stray viruses that are going around. So I liked that during COVID and everyone was masking up, I never got sick, other than when I actually got COVID. So if there is a bug going around at all and I'm out around people, I'm going to catch it. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And I've had to go out recently around people and I've had to go unmasked, which is not something I like doing, but it's a necessity when what I'm doing pays me. So it is what it is. I can't wear a mask at some of the other things that I do. So I have a bit of a cold, I think. Or it could just be severely dry. I don't know. It depends if it goes away tomorrow or not. But I'll take another COVID test tomorrow morning, just to be sure, because they say it's best to take them first thing in the morning, like as soon as you get up, before you like wash out your mouth and all that sort of stuff. But like I feel a tightness in my chest and it's a cough, a definite cough. And I got my drink that I've already drunk a lot of, so I might have to go get in there a drink at some point. Because it's very coffee right now. Well, that's coffee, but I'm very coffee-y. Just waiting for more people to pop in here. Thank you to the 2 people watching. Really appreciate you. Because it says 3 people are watching. I'm one of them. That's the problem with not having regular live streams, is nobody knows when they're going to happen, so they can't plan for them or intend to be around them. And it's like I tweet it out and stuff, but you know, my tweets don't get much reach. It depends if it would pop up in people's YouTube algorithms or not. So it's hard to let people know who would be interested in watching that it's happening. So I need to get back to like a semi-regular schedule at some point. Hello, Roy. Nice to see you in the Sandbox. Um, yeah, I thought I'd start a little bit earlier today because Looney Tunes 9000 was mentioning, I think yesterday when I was in chat, somebody's chat, um, that the surfs don't actually stream today. Because part of the reason why I start at 6 p.m. in the evenings is so that I don't have too much overlap with them because I know we share a lot of the same audience. And so I figure by 6, they're not always done, but they're usually wrapping up around then. But since they're not streaming today, I figured I could start an hour early. I was hoping to start maybe 2 hours early, start at 4, but that wasn't happening because by the time I got all my information and stuff together, it was like, yeah, I still need time to do all of this makeup and whatnot. So anyway, I am rambling, waiting for people to pop in the Sandbox. Hello, my dogs are goth. There's still a lot of people on Twitter. My dogs are goth. It's still where I'm getting the bulk of my information. It's so hard to replace it. It's a lot more difficult to be on there, no doubt about it. But like Blue Sky hasn't gotten to the point, like nearly even close to where Twitter was and stuff, and it still has all the politicians, all the journalists, a lot of my circles and everything are still on Twitter. And so I still have to use it quite regularly, and it is getting more difficult. No doubt about it. Because I started my new Twitter account. Let me just pop that up here. So I have new LeftoftheBox on Twitter and on Blue Sky, and these will be more like my channel content boxes. Channel content accounts. Oh, this is going to be a rough stream for me. And the thing that's kind of annoying me about this one in particular is ever since, the new blue check happened in Twitter where it's all paid for and all that sort of stuff, I went on blocking sprees and I've blocked thousands and thousands and probably even tens of thousands of people. Just like block, 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 block. Nobody is blocked on this channel, on this account yet. So, so that's a bit annoying. And what's super annoying too, like with Blue Sky, it was super easy because when I was logged in on this account, I could go over to my SandeeLovas account, open it and see who I was following on that account and just hit follow, 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 follow. But on Twitter, you only go down about 20 people or so when you're checking out other people, like who follows other people and stuff. So that wasn't very helpful. And so I'm still trying to find a lot of the regular people that I would normally follow to try to get the algorithms to be a bit of the same so that I can rely more on this account for collecting my news items so that they're easier to find and put together so I'm not scrolling through a bazillion things because I like a lot of content on Twitter for a whole bunch of different reasons. So if I could at least split it between like, here are things that I need for a stream versus I'm being supportive and I just genuinely like these tweets, that would help me a lot. Hello, MIDI doctors. Thank you for coming out. Yes, my dogs are goth, the hostile fart sauna, as I call it. So yeah, I have some news to go over, and we might as well just get into it. So last news stream that I did, and check out my last stream that I did with the Letter Hack and Harvey K. Harvey K did a pretty good job with the Canadian pop quiz. He's in the contenders for like Canadian Left of the Box Jeopardy. And I had a really good conversation with both of them. Because even though it was about the Bill of Rights in the United States, a lot of what they want down there applies up here too. So, and we got talking about the drawing and the technique and stuff. So really interesting live stream if you're looking for something. I want to say that isn't as politically heavy, but it is all about politics. So it's not about specific stories, let's put it that way. And you get to see some wonderful art by the Letter Hack. He sent me some progress drawings of the cartoons and the comic that he did, so you'd be able to see that. So go check that out. Anyway, back to my last news live stream. I pointed out that the mayor of Ottawa is a Zionist. The mayor of Ottawa decided to not participate in Capital Pride events during their Pride celebrations because Capital Pride sent out such an offensive statement that the mayor of Ottawa, straight white man's like, "Nuh-uh, I'm not playing with you guys anymore because you said this horrible thing." It's gotten a little out of hand, I think, with the amount of people now boycotting Capital Pride events. Like, it's really kind of ridiculous what's going on. So first, let's touch on the statement again, the statement that's causing all this hoorah. So here we have Capital Pride statement with solidarity with Palestine. Ooh, they used the P word. I think I see what the problem is. They used the P word there. So in my last news stream, I didn't read the whole statement. Well, this time I'm going to, because I think it's important to know what people are up in arms about. So this is the statement here. As we head into our local Pride season in August, we wish to reaffirm our commitment to solidarity as the core principle guiding our work. While our mandate is focused on queer and trans communities in the region, the violence and instability we are witnessing around the globe have far-reaching impacts on many members of our local communities. These issues demand our collective attention. Over the past year, we have been witness to escalating levels of violence in Israel and Palestine. So they're saying both, Israel and Palestine. We are aware of how polarizing this conflict has been and how painful it is for members of our local communities to witness the ongoing death and devastation inflicted on innocent civilians. So far, I'm not seeing anything wrong here. You know, they don't like seeing death and devastation inflicted on innocent civilians. That's a very open-ended, descriptor right there. In this moment, 2S LGBTQIA+ organizations across the country and around the world have been called upon to take action, like the International Criminal Court and the ICJ. They've been calling on countries around the world to take action on this particular issue, actually. We are committed to creating spaces where all queer and trans people feel safe to celebrate Pride together. To that end, we are deeply concerned by the rising tide of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. See, they're saying anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. They're not saying one or the other. It's a both thing. We are witnessing here in Canada. As a community facing rising levels of hate-motivated crimes, we know all too well how hate erodes our security. In this climate, we reaffirm intolerance has no place in our events. So far, super solid statement. I can't see why anyone would be upset. Following Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, the world watched in horror as the full extent of the atrocities committed against civilians were uncovered. We condemn in the strongest possible terms the acts of terrorism committed on that day. So here, they are acknowledging the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th. What could possibly be wrong about this statement? Well, you see, they didn't end there. That's, I guess, where a lot of the Zionists are upset. They didn't end their statement there. They continue. By the same token, we cannot stay silent in the face of Israel's endless and brutal campaign in Gaza and mounting violence in the West Bank, where innocent Palestinians, many of who have friends and family and loved ones in our communities, are being slaughtered, dehumanized, and dispossessed of their land in flagrant violation of international law. The situation is so dire that the International Court of Justice expressed grave concerns with the state of the war in Gaza, stating there is a plausible risk of genocide. So here, they just said a very uncomfortable fact for Zionists to hear. This is a real thing. It's happening. There is horrendous violence being inflicted upon innocent civilians in the West Bank and in Gaza. The ICJ saying it's a plausible risk of genocide. This is a real thing. And yet the Zionists are so upset that they acknowledge this real thing that is happening. Part of the growing Islamophobic sentiment we are witnessing is fueled by the pinkwashing of the war in Gaza and racist notions that all Palestinians are homophobic and transphobic. By portraying itself as a protector of the rights of queer and trans people in the Middle East, Israel seeks to draw attention away from its abhorrent human rights abuses against Palestinians. We refuse to be complicit in this violence. Indeed, to withhold our solidarity from Palestinians in the name of upholding 2S LGBTQIA+ rights betrays the promise of liberation that guides our work. We join our voice to the call of greater protections of civilians and reject any attempt to use a devastating conflict as a pretext to advance hate. To breathe life into our sincere hope and end to this war and justice for all its victims, we commit to the following actions. Integrating resources such as the Palestinian BDS National Committee's boycott list and existing review process of current and future sponsorship agreements. Ah, yes, the BDS, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. Lots of Zionists get really upset about that. Like down in the States, in fact, there's a lot of states where you're not allowed to participate in this because this boycott, they can't handle it. And yet here's a lot of heterosexual, cisgendered people boycotting a pride event because they're calling for actions against the horrendous genocide that's happening in Gaza. Nice to know where some people's priorities lie. So, hosting Zafa, a queer Arab showcase, a signature event as part of the 2024 Capital Pride Festival that features discussion about ongoing issues facing LGBTQIA+ Arabs locally and abroad. Very important discussion. Recognizing the ongoing genocide against Palestinians in opening remarks at the 2024 Capital Pride Festival signature events, and working with all our partners, both public and private, to push for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, the immediate release of all hostages. They're asking for all hostages to be released even. Increase access to humanitarian aid and more accessible pathways for refugees. These commitments serve only as a starting point for other work that will continue past this month. Our mission in organizing the Capital Pride Festival remains to celebrate, advocate, educate, and connect people, respecting the full diversity of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. That is a brilliant statement. That is a solid statement. Really good, well-rounded statement that has made Zionists lose their minds. Completely. So last live news stream, like I mentioned, the mayor of Ottawa said because of this horrendous statement that they sent out, they're boycotting these Capital Pride events. Well, it didn't end there. From CTV News Ottawa, here are the organizations withdrawing from Ottawa Pride this year because of this statement. Because of this statement. The number of organizations and leaders in Ottawa pulling out of Capital Pride events continues to grow in response to a statement the group made expressing solidarity with Palestinians last week. Again, this is because that statement I just read, that all of these groups are now boycotting this event. But, don't you dare do BDS. So I'm just going to scroll down. So we'll find out who some of these groups are. Jewish Federation of Ottawa. They're boycotting it. In a statement last week, the Jewish Federation of Ottawa said it met with Capital Pride co-chairs to address our serious concerns about their recent anti-Semitic statement. They call that statement anti-Semitic? There is nothing anti-Semitic in that statement. But in a statement on Wednesday, the organization decided it would not be participating. These two blow my mind. Are you fucking kidding me? The Liberal Party of Canada, the Ontario Liberal Party. Okay, this is the federal Liberal Party. This is Justin Trudeau here. And they care because Ottawa is the capital of Canada, so a lot of federal politicians could potentially participate in this. But they are boycotting this event because of that statement I just read. The Liberal Party of Canada, who has participated in Pride Parade in Ottawa in the past, told CTV News it would not be participating this year. In light of recent decisions made by Capital Pride Board, the Liberal Party has decided not to participate in Capital Pride events this year, and instead will host our own event to celebrate Ottawa's 2S LGBTQIA+ communities, says Liberal spokesperson Parker Lund in a statement. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh no, we don't like what we don't like that you said. What? What is it that they said? Like, point Liberal Party of Canada. Can you please write out in crayon what in that statement was so offensive? Just write it out in crayon in big block letters for me to read. What was offensive about that statement? Where is the anti-Semitism in that statement? Can you please point that out? Don't just say in light of recent decisions made by it. Say specifically what it is in that statement that is just so horrendous that you are boycotting this event. After years of participating with it, after years of flying the pink flags all around and saying how you're such an ally to the queer community, point out exactly the phrase, quote the damn thing. What is it that's so offensive about it that you're boycotting this event? God damn it, this is making me so mad because I have given the Liberal Party a fair bit of credit when it comes to queer issues. Justin Trudeau is fake on a lot of things, but when it comes to queer issues, I think he's actually being sincere. And yet this is what we get from them. Are you fucking kidding me? Ontario Liberal Party, they don't matter. They're not even official party status in this province because they have so few seats in Queen's Park. But anyway, they say, as Ottawa celebrates Pride this weekend, the Ontario Liberal Party is committed to celebrating and honoring the contributions of 2S LGBTQIA+ residents of our nation's capital, the party said in a news release. The statement released last week by Capital Pride, however, does not live up to the spirit of inclusion of the event or the party believes in. Again, quote what you're talking about. What is it in this statement that is not being inclusive? I think the biggest problem here is that they are being inclusive. They're being inclusive of the Palestinians who are being slaughtered at this moment. That's the problem. They're being too inclusive. I read this and I don't understand where this outrage is coming from. I know mentioning BDS is a triggering phrase for a lot of Zionists. I get that part. Then put that in your goddamn statement as to why you're not participating. Say it's because they support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. Spell it out for people. Don't need to read the rest of that. The City of Ottawa also. A memo from City Manager Wendy Stephenson said city staff will not be participating as an official contingent in the parade, but will retain operational support of the event on Sunday. Aw, aren't they so sweet to still, do their job in light of that horrendous statement? Following the August 6th statement issued by Capital Pride Board, which took a position on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, some city staff and members of the community have expressed they now feel excluded, unwelcome, or unsafe to participate in this year's parade. You know what? If what they said is so offensive that they want to stop the slaughter in Gaza, don't go. Okay. I wouldn't want to go to any event where there's Zionists there that are saying, you know what? We're okay with the slaughter over there. We're okay with that. We're okay with all the innocent Palestinians being brutally murdered. We're fine with, I don't want to go to events with them. Like if the who is feeling unsafe by that statement to show up there? It would just be people that are pro-genocide. That's who. Because there's lots of queer Jewish people who go to these events and feel just fine. You know, it's not an all or nothing thing. Not all Jewish people are Zionists, and not all Zionists are Jewish people. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, again, just spell out with crayon in big block letters what it is that was so offensive about that statement. Like, what is it that makes people feel uncomfortable participating in this event by them just saying, you know, the horrendous thing of, let's see. By the same token, we cannot stay silent in the face of Israel's endless and brutal campaign in Gaza and mounting violence in the West Bank, where innocent Palestinians, many who have friends and families and loved one communities, are being slaughtered, dehumanized, dispossessed of the land, and flagrant violation of international law. If hearing that makes you feel unsafe at this event, then there is something severely wrong with you. Ottawa Carleton District School Board also. There's the mayor, Ottawa mayor, the one that I featured last week, who again, just so offended by this that he can't go. And he's the one that started this. He's the first one that kind of went out and spoke out that everyone else then got up in arms about. CHEO, Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, the Ottawa Hospital, Montfort Hospital, Royal Ottawa Mental Health Center, Council des Catholiques ou Central East, the French Catholic School Board, the French Public School Board, Ottawa Tourism. Yes, don't come to one of our big tourist events because, you know, they don't want to see slaughter in Gaza. Therefore, because they stated that you shouldn't come to one of our biggest tourist events. Loblaws, well, I don't give a fuck what they say about anything. That's Galen Weston there. That's, no. Who gives a fuck what they say about anything? University of Ottawa, Algonquin College, Carleton University, U.S. Embassy in Ottawa, Bank of Canada, Public Service Pride Network, Giant Tiger? Okay, that's like a, how do you describe it? It's like a, the surplus clothing store, like a, they're like, oh, what's the word? They're like a discount department store that has like 3 chains left in Ontario or something. NDP Green's German embassy still plan to attend. So there we go. We got some people still planning on attending. The New Democrat Party of Canada still plans to attend Capitol Pride, stating its intent to show people, especially young, to us LGBTQ people in Ottawa and across the country, that we see and support them. The NDP has been absolutely unequivocally clear in our position on the Israel-Hamas war. We continue to advocate vocally for a ceasefire, for the safe return of all hostages, for humanitarian aid, and for actions that will bring justice, peace, and safety for everyone in the region, said a spokesperson in a statement. The German embassy in Ottawa confirmed in an email that it will be participating in the parade, but said in a post on X last week that it would not support delegitimizing Israel or promote BDSF efforts. Okay, so they're meeting them halfway. At least they're stating it. They have the gall to at least state it, what they're not a fan of. Pride events have to be safe and supportive space for all 2S LGBTQIA plus people and should not be misused for other political purposes, the embassy said. The embassy says staff will be marching with diplomats for equality. The federal and provincial Green Party will be participating and said they are disheartened by the decision of the Ottawa Hospital, Sutcliffe, that's the mayor, and others. We respect the right of facilitating body of Capital Pride to make statements regarding complex political issues such as Palestine-Israel conflict, particularly those aligned with the United Nations Charter of Rights and Human Freedoms. However, we believe that decision impacting our communities in Ottawa, particularly those historically vulnerable and marginalized, must be made with the utmost care, read the joint statement from the Ottawa Area Green Party Riding Association presidents and CEO. Pride has always stood for liberation for all queer people. We are troubled by the statement made by the mayor, equating the Pride Committee's call for permanent ceasefire and recognition of the State of Israel's documented war crimes with causing hurt and distress for many members of the Jewish community. CTV News has also reached out to other organizations, blah, 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 blah. So here we have, yes, Liberals, U.S. Embassy, some civil servants withdraw from Ottawa Pride Parade over pro-Palestinian stance. I think I usually do too many articles in my bar because I feel like, oh, I'm missing something. Let me just quickly scan this to see if there was something that I actually needed or wanted to get to in this, because I think I read their statement. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has previously taken part in the Pride Parade in the nation's capital, as have some other prominent political leaders. This year, the group have marched before, have announced plans to pull out of the parade, while others are contemplating whether to follow suit. Yeah, I don't think there's any more new information in that one. But here we have some organizations that are standing up and supporting the statement. So it's not all against it. There are some people that are going to bat for Capital Pride. And so this is the super tiny print there that I can't read. It's a union. Let's see if I scroll down to the bottom, it'll be a bit bigger in words there. The Canadian Association of Professional Employees. And so Pride Ottawa, no one is free until we are all free. Pride is and always has been a protest, and 2S LGBTQIA plus communities have always understood the basic truth that no one is free until we are all free. CAPE stands in solidarity with Capital Pride. We applaud its statement of Palestine solidarity and their stance against anti-Semitism and Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza. Like Capital Pride, CAPE stands unequivocally against anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Palestinian racism. So again, the Zionists are upset because they were too inclusive, because they included the Islamophobia and the anti-Palestinian racism. You know, if the Capital Pride statement was just calling it for an end to anti-Semitism, they'd be fine with that statement. But how dare they also call for an end to Islamophobia? One of the politicians I've seen speak out, this is, of course, plenty of politicians may have spoken out, but I usually get Leah Gazan's tweets in my Twitter feed. And so I noticed hers, and it's important to, again, name politicians to get people familiar with some of the politicians we have here in Canada. Leah Gazan is also a huge advocate for basic livable income. So she is a good politician to follow to learn more about that sort of stuff. But she also released the following statement on leaders withdrawing from Capital Pride events. Pride has always been political. At the same time that hate movements against 2S LGBTQ plus people are on the rise, so too are hate movements growing against Jewish, Muslim, immigrant, Indigenous, and racialized communities. It is more important than ever for us to recognize the interconnection of these struggles and work in solidarity to fight hate, violence, and oppression. People across Canada are experiencing overwhelming heartbreak at the destruction and death perpetrated by Netanyahu's government in Gaza, a campaign of violence that the ICJ has suggested plausibly constitutes a genocide. It is perfectly legitimate, legal, and ethical to take a position in support of a permanent ceasefire, immediate release of all hostages, increased access to humanitarian aid, and more accessible pathways for refugees. It is perfectly legitimate, legal, and ethical to engage in peaceful protests in order to persuade Canada to advance these objectives. People with platforms and power have a duty to stand with community instead of leveraging their support as a tool of control and punishment. Allyship should not be conditional. Right there. Should not be, we will only support you so long as you do exactly what we dictate. I am so proud that our leader, Jagmeet Singh, understands this. It is in this spirit that I stand with 2S LGBTQ+ community in capital pride and encouraging others not to turn their backs on the most important national event celebrating 2S LGBTQ+ human rights and freedoms. Right there. Allyship should not be conditional. Which is so important because of what the Capital Pride statement said about the pinkwashing of what's happening over there. Like, oh, in Gaza, the way that queer people are treated are so brutal, blah, blah, blah. Therefore, you shouldn't care about the genocide that's happening there, apparently. No, my allyship is not conditional on certain aspects over there. I care because it's a genocide against people. Plain and simple, full stop, right there. Innocent people are being slaughtered. I don't want to see that happen. So, that's not on condition as to who those people are. I'm not going to pick and choose, who I don't want to see genocided. I don't want to see anyone genocided. Like, that is the statement right there. Allyship should not be conditional. And while all of this is going on, I just wanted to make a quick note of, again, how double standards this country is when it comes to protecting queer folks. Bisexual man in GTA facing deportation in 4 days makes desperate plea to stay in Canada. A Kenyan man facing deportation fears his life will be in danger if Canada sends him back in 4 days. Charles, 48, arrived in search of safety, fleeing his home in Kenya because he is bisexual. On Wednesday, he and his supporter protested outside his local MP's office to deliver a petition with 2,000 signatures and have meeting about the imminent deportation in hopes of stopping it. It's something the government needs to consider. This is about life and death. We are talking about my life, he told CTV News Toronto Wednesday. The father of three, claimed asylum in 2019 and worked on the front lines of the pandemic as a personal support worker, cook, cleaner, and made the Jane and Finch Black Creek neighborhood his home. And they want to deport him back to a place that will potentially execute him because he's bisexual. This person who, from the sounds of it, is an outstanding citizen in his, is an outstanding individual in his community. The front lines of the pandemic, personal support worker, cook and cleaner. Charles says he fears persecution by his local Kenyan community if he returns. He says the Canadian government purchased a plane ticket for him to leave on Sunday, August 25th. We all believe Canada is a safe haven for LGBTQ+ people, but when you come here, things can be opposite because I don't know how I can explain my sexuality to anybody, he said. Just heartbreaking story. So after meeting, Charles and his supporters said the MP's office agreed that to contact the immigration minister and reconnect on Thursday to hopefully reverse the deportation order. A spokesperson for Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada said in an email to CTV's News Toronto that it cannot comment on individual cases due to privacy. The spokesperson said, however, that anyone subjected to removal may be eligible to apply for a pre-removal assessment as part of their removal process. A decision to remove someone from Canada is not taken lightly. Every individual facing removal is entitled to due process, but once all avenues appear to appeal are exhausted, they are removed from Canada in accordance with Canadian law, the statement reads. Also, I just want to bring people's attention to this Ottawa Citizen op-ed. It's an opinion piece, so I don't feel the need to get too much into it. I'll try to remember to link it below, but please look it out. Really good perspective in here. So she says, I am queer and Jewish and I will be marching in the Pride Parade. I have found the last couple of weeks extremely painful, but I refuse to choose between my Jewish identity and my queer family. So what's her first name? Can I pronounce her first name? Because I can't pronounce her last name. Troster? Is that her name? Oh, Ariel, right there. Ariel. So I come from two cultures that love to argue. Growing up Jewish, my family debated political issues at the kitchen table. I learned about the ways rabbis argue around the Talmud, crafting rhetorical arguments about correction, interpretations, and sacred texts. And when I came out as queer, 26, I sat through many meetings where we debated the ways our identities and struggles intersected. All of those conversations were messy and they sometimes got heated, but I always understood that I was among family and that family didn't give up on each other. Let's see. Yeah, so again, she does kind of allude to, like, I'd like to see a stronger statement, follow-up statement from the organization acknowledging the pain expressed by queer and trans Jews. But again, please point out where in that statement it was offensive. What in this statement is offensive? I want somebody to highlight it for me. What is so upsetting about this statement? So I thought I'd update everyone on this because it is making me lose my mind. Let's check the Sandbox. See if other people are as upset as me. Just for people who are showing up a bit later, you're going to have to forgive my voice. I have a bit of a cough. I took a COVID test earlier. It came back negative, but I'll take another one tomorrow morning because it's really tight cough and dry cough. Let's see. And again, part of the frustrating thing about this is that it's a bunch of entitled, straight white people who, a lot of them aren't even Jewish. They're not queer, they're not Jewish, yet they're inserting themselves into this. They're making it about them. You know, like, oh, this is so offensive. I can't participate in it, even though I'm not queer and I'm not Jewish. Just, so many people are just, you know, cishet white people making it about them, that statement is so offensive to them they can't participate in an event that has no personal significance to them. Like, you know, talk about main character syndrome going on. So frustrating. My dogs are goth. This might be the last straw with the Liberal Party until time to vote against PP, I guess. Crotchety smear campaign by Zionists, as usual. And we're not done with those smear campaigns. We'll get to another one that, again, it's just, Crotchety, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada has shown very little bravery on Israel committing war crimes against Palestinians. Yes, I still have not seen anything from Justin Trudeau calling out the Israeli government for what they're doing. Nothing. No statement about, oh, can you please stop the slaughter or anything. Just a constant, Israel has the right to protect itself, and oh, we support humanitarian aid, but we'll do nothing that will actually help that humanitarian aid get to the people. And of course, he proudly stood up on stage and said, Zionism should not be a dirty word. Bad Lefty, I'm guessing the Canadian version of APAC made number of phone calls between the 6th and the date of this statement. Oh, probably. CGIA, I think is what it is here. The Canadian Jewish something Council. CIJA. I'd recognize it if I saw it, but yeah, they're the version of it. Bad Lefty echoing Mandela's South Africa freedom isn't complete until Palestine is free. My dogs are goth. I'm a gay person who doesn't like to see other people mass murdered day after day. They've made a huge deal about queer people who support Palestine. Straight Zionists using it as BS talking point. Yeah, don't use my identity as a queer person as an excuse to slaughter tens of thousands of people. Okay, you do not get to do that in my name. Oh. Bad Lefty as a cis het whitey, we are insufferable. You know, there are some I have a cis het white friend. You're not all bad. Grand Theft Autobot, how dare they not let me be racist and or bigoted? Gar, me mad. Hopefully I picked up on what we're talking about. I just got here. Well, welcome to the Sandbox, Grand Theft Autobot. No, you're about right. You're about right. uh, okay. Need a little bit of a drink. I might have to get in there drink through this again because got this cough that I'm feeling kind of sick, like lightheaded and stuff. So I think I'm actually coming down with a summer cold. Hopefully it's not COVID. Like I said, I took a test earlier today. It came back negative, but I'm worried because that test is really old. So I'll take another test tomorrow morning because they say that's usually the best time to take those tests. Let me get to the next one that is in relation to this. Is it that one? No, it's this one here. So again, on my last news stream, I mentioned that there was a meme going around that was calling that I wasn't too necessarily personally thrilled with. And it was sent out by a union leader. And I didn't personally like the meme because I understand what the meme says. However, I want to make a very distinct case between it's one thing to call out the Israeli government and Zionists. It's another thing to call out Jewish people. And I felt this meme kind of blurred that line a bit because it's of an Olympic diver with a Star of David on their shoulder, diving and then turns into a bomb or something of that sort. I have the video here. I don't think there's anything wrong with me showing it on YouTube. It's not that graphic. But I didn't like it because it seemed to be pointing at like an individual Jewish person as opposed to the nation, even though I understand it's about the nation of Israel being allowed to participate in the Olympics versus, other nations that are told not to because of there's I get it. I get it. Um, but do I think it's fair the pushback that Fred is getting because of this? No, absolutely not. I don't think he should have to step down as a union leader because of it either. Because I understand what he was trying to say. And if you read the bulk of his stuff, he's not anti-Semitic. He again stands in solidarity with Palestinians. And even though this meme kind of, I feel, blurs the line, I completely understand what he was trying to communicate with it. And he clarified that too. So I don't see what the problem is, but just like the capital pride statement and all of a sudden there's all this pushback, well, there's all this pushback towards him as well. So let's get a little bit into this. So this is Nora Leto. Here's the video that has led so many to calling for Fred Hahn's head. So that is the union leader right there. Reminder that despite the ancient tradition of Olympic truce, Israel bombs killed over 523 people over the course of the Olympics. Anyone claiming anti-Semitism is using it as a shield to protect Israel. I don't know if there's sound involved with this. So let me get my headphone.
To the Summer Olympics here in Paris. Now we have the diving event. All eyes are on the diver from the Israeli team as he is approaching the end of the diving platform. The diver is jumping and is aiming his arms to the sky. He performs a flawless sequence of twists and turns.
The diver, an Olympic champion.
So you get the gist of it there. Again, I wasn't necessarily keen on this meme because it's pointing to that specific diver. But again, I understand what Fred was trying to say. So to me, coming out with a statement, clarifying what he meant, to me is good enough. Apparently not so for a lot of people. So here is CUPE Ontario President Fred Hahn's full statement to members. Oh, that is teeny tiny, isn't it? Okay, let me do something for you guys to make this easier to see. You're not seeing what I am doing right now. It's magic. And then I go back to that, to the next one. I do this. Oops, that's a little bit too big. There we go. That should make it easier to read. Okay, let's get back to and see if I can make it bigger, still be legible. There we go. That is the statement now, big enough for people to see on the screen. I'm not going to read the whole statement because it is a bit long. But just, dear CUPE sisters and brothers, comrades and friends, the past few days have been some of the toughest, saddest I've experienced during my almost 3 decades as an active trade unionist. With all the accusations online, attacks by Premier Doug Ford, we'll get to that in a moment, and media reports that CUPE National Executive Board have asked me to resign from our national board, I knew I needed to write you directly about the situation. CUPE Ontario has a long history of solidarity with the people of Palestine going back well before I became president. Members have voted at multiple conventions and continue and even deepened that work over the past 20 years. As happened to our union in the past, those who spoke up against the actions of the State of Israel last fall were quickly labeled anti-Semitic and vilified, especially online. I was one of those people. This smear was nothing new to those of us who advocate for the cause of Palestine. But the charge became part of the union's national convention, with some members of CUPE's National Executive Board suggesting I resign. Because I respect the democracy of our union, I maintain then, as I do now, that the members should decide. Delegates do the National Convention pass an emergency resolution strengthening our union support for Palestine and calls for ceasefire. And I was proud to be re-elected by Ontario delegates as the General Vice President from our region. Now I'm just going to scroll a bit. Feel free to pause and read the rest of it. I'll get to the second page, which I wanted to cover. But if you want to finish reading that. And so then I go there and I do this. So this is the second part of his statement. It's why I'm both so sad and angry. Trade unionists. Oh, I guess I probably should have finished the last sentence of the thing. I've given many decades of my adult life to our union. It's because I deeply love my fellow CUPE members and work they do. I cherish the cause of the working people, the work we do together, fighting for justice here and around the globe. The power of our democracy deserves respect. It's why I'm both so sad and so angry. Trade unionists I have come to know and respect voted this week to overturn the democratic decision of CUPE members. It is unprecedented in our union's history, and I'm worried countless CUPE members who are active in the Palestinian solidarity movement could be left more vulnerable and exposed by the precedent as they face similar situations at work. I want to be clear, I utterly reject the charge of anti-Semitism. Anyone who knows and works with me knows it to be a lie. It remains my strongly held view that it is a terrible mistake and anti-Semitic to conflate abhorrent actions by the State of Israel with Jewish humanity or identity. See, right there. It remains my strongly held view that it is a terrible mistake and anti-Semitic to conflate the abhorrent actions of the State of Israel with Jewish humanity or identity, which again is what I feel. I have heard from many members who are struggling to let's scroll down so you can see that. I have heard from many members who are struggling to process all of this occurring at the same time as Doug Ford and some of his cabinet members have been using this to attack me quite viciously and publicly. CUPE Ontario members know our greatest victories against the Ford government's anti-worker agenda has been through the strength of our solidarity. He's pretty much suggesting that Doug Ford is just using this as any excuse to go after a union leader. Which is true. He will. Doug Ford he's anti-union, he's anti-worker, and he will use anything he can to cause chaos within their systems. So it continues, which in this unprecedented, very challenging moment is what brings me hope and guides the decisions I make. I have always had faith in the members of CUPE Ontario and been a proud faith they place in my repeatedly and democratically electing me both the provincial and national level. There is much work to be done, and because I respect the democracy of our union, the choice of our members, I will be here to continue to fight by my side with all of you. So despite all the calls for him to resign, he is saying, elect me out. Like, if that's the issue, I'm not stepping down. You will have to elect me out. Well, let's get a little bit into how Doug Ford is attacking this private citizen, like the member, the leader of a union, using his public forums to go after this individual. So here's Doug Ford tweeting out, I applaud QP National for asking Fred Hahn to step down. Now it's time for Fred to put his members first and do the right thing by resigning from all his positions of leadership. And then we get into this. So this is at the end of a press conference. So with the right earbud. So this is a press conference that had been going on for a half hour, and they were talking a lot about another thing I'm about to get into with the Ontario government when it comes to the supervised consumption sites. And so a lot will actually be touching back on this video, but all of that had pretty much wrapped up. But before he left, he couldn't leave until he got this in.
Get the economy going and let's move forward.
Thank you.
If that's it, I just want to give my...
So that's it? Well, before I leave, let me just give my opinion out of the blue about this random person.
My Minister, David Piccini, a big shout out for his comments about Fred Hahn yesterday. I'm proud of you, David, and this guy's been a bully for 20 years. And you know what's funny? I'm getting messages on my phone from QP members saying his comments have been disgusting.
Doug Ford gets messages on his phone all the time whenever it's convenient for him. He will always, always say this. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
In my opinion, he's a disgusting human being anyways, but that's here nor there. You know, he...
Oh, no, that is here nor there. To call this person a disgusting human being, that he didn't say the words he said was disgusting. He didn't say I was outraged by the words. He is saying this person as an individual is a disgusting human being. Glass house, Doug Ford?
For 20 years. And you know what's funny? I'm getting messages on my phone from QP members saying his comments have been disgusting. In my opinion, he's a disgusting human being anyways, but that's here nor there. You know, he says he's bigoted comments. It's unacceptable here in Ontario. We have 110.
Says the man who has regularly accused immigrants of everything. Just everything. Saying that they're bringing their crime and all that sort of stuff to the province. Doug Ford has regularly said that sort of thing.
Nationalities speaking 200 languages, and we all need to get together. And I encourage QP Canada, someone has to discipline this guy, and I encourage the workers next time a vote comes, vote this character out, because in my opinion, he's just a terrible, terrible human being. Thank you.
So that is Doug Ford just interjecting himself into this union matter. And of course, again, Doug Ford is just doing this because he hates unions, and he can see this as a wedge issue to rip them apart. But you see, the thing is that what Doug Ford said was so bad that QP's national office, the one that has originally called for Fred Hahn to resign, pushed back on what Doug Ford said. So, statement by QP's national officers regarding Doug Ford's comments. In light of Doug Ford's recent comments about internal QP matters and QP Ontario President Fred Hahn, QP wishes to be clear about several things. We do not take advice from a union-hating, public service gutting premier trying to distract from his own scandals and track record. Damn. Doug Ford and his ministers can concentrate on reopening the rural ERs they have closed, funding the public schools they are continued to neglect, addressing their Greenbelt scandal, and reversing their own decision to give public land in Toronto to private mega spa no one wants. QP's National Executive Board made the difficult decision to ask for Fred Hahn's resignation as general vice president because he reposted a deeply problematic video that was a clear violation of our union's equality statement. Further, our decision was to ask for the resignation was made before Minister Panisi and Premier Ford chose to attack Fred Hahn in the way that is completely revolting and unacceptable. Nothing about this decision negates Fred's lifelong commitment to CUPE members and union activism. Nothing about this decision changes CUPE's clear, consistent position on the bombardment of Gaza by Israel. Either CUPE continues to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Let me rephrase that sentence in the proper connotation there. Nothing about this decision changes CUPE's clear, consistent position on the bombardment of Gaza and Israel either. CUPE continues to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, a release of all hostages from Gaza, and an end to the blockade of Gaza and the restoration of humanitarian aid. CUPE also calls on the Government of Canada to suspend the sale of arms and military equipment to Israel as is committed to doing in March 2024. To suggest that asking for Fred's resignation as a GVP is to throw in with those who supported genocide in Gaza or a response to conservative premier's bullying is frankly ludicrous. CUPE will continue to advocate its position on Israel-Palestine, which has been reaffirmed numerous times through democratic process at our conventions. So I don't know what their original thing is, but they have called for him to resign, which Fred has not, because I think, like me, the meme that he sent out was a little blurry as to its meaning and stuff. But I don't think they need to call for his resignation. They could just say, we do not support that particular meme. This is where we stand on the issue. And, have Fred send out a clarifying statement. I think that would have been fine enough. But to call for his resignation, I think was way overboard. But I love this from the union right here. We do not take advice from a union-hating, public service gutting premier trying to distract from his own scandals and track record. Yeah. Unions don't like Doug Ford, unless they're the police unions, and then they love Doug Ford. So CUPE Ontario president to continue to fight side by side with union members amid calls to resign, and this is from CP24. CUPE Ontario president Fred Hahn says he fully rejects the charge of anti-Semitism and says he will continue to fight side by side with union members despite calls for his resignation by the National Executive Board. I think I've covered most of that. Yeah, so I've covered most of that. I put just again, I'm so afraid of missing something that I meant to say that I have so many things in my bar to hit. But here are some organizations that are standing with Fred. We have Labor for Palestine. They stand with Fred. Labor for Palestine calls on trade unionists to stand strong against attacks on Palestinian solidarity. Labor for Palestine calls on CUPE National Executive Board to reverse its call for CUPE Ontario President Fred Hahn's resignation and urges them and others within labor movement not to cave to Zionist pressure. The call for Hahn's resignation is a dangerous attack on every member of labor movement and distraction from the current genocide in Gaza that has claimed over 50,000 lives. And part of the reason why I'm also glad he's not stepping down is this sends out a very poor message to anyone else who might be vocal about what's happening over in Palestine, that might get more worried about, like, what if I don't phrase it right and the Zionists get mad at me? For one thing, they'll get mad at you anyway. But it's important to stand by your principles and not back down. And, to cave to that pressure is just sending a message to other people in the union that if you try to speak up, if you try to stand by your principles on this issue, you will get cut down. And that's not right. We need more people standing their ground on this issue, not allowing the Zionists to be the bully, unlike what Premier Doug Ford says. It's the Zionists that are being the bullies, not Fred. This is another statement, and this is from Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition condemns National Executive Board of CUPE for succumbing to Zionist pressure. So another organization standing with Fred, Jews Say No to Genocide, particularly our own CUPE and other union members, condemns the calls from CUPE executive for CUPE Ontario president to resign. Let's see if there's anything else in this one that I should mention. They're talking about the meme in particular. Let's see what they say about the meme. This video calling for a ban on Israel's participation in Olympics depicted an Olympic diver representing the state of Israel with Megan David, Star of David, on his shoulder. After jumping off the diving board, the diver turns into the bomb. The video in question has been called anti-Semitic because the diver appears with just a Star of David alone and not with a small stripe above and below it, denoting the symbol of the Israeli flag. As Jews who have spent the last 10 months watching in sheer agony as Israel has slaughtered the Palestinian people of Gaza around the clock, we have witnessed the Jewish symbolism of the Star of David being used to mark horrific Israeli violence against Palestinians. Last year, Israeli police branded the Star of David on the cheek of a Palestinian man who was detained from Surfat refugee camp in occupied East Jerusalem. Israeli soldiers regularly paint the symbol on the rubble and carve it in the ground of neighborhoods in Gaza destroyed by their attacks and erected over ethnically cleansed Palestinian villages. Just as Israel claims its actions on behalf of the entirety of the Jewish people, so too has it wrapped itself in the Jewish symbolism, such as placing the Star of David at the center of their flag. Fred has apologized for sharing the video and has taken responsibility for the anti-Semitism underlying the conflation of the Jewish symbol with the actions of the state of Israel. We thank Fred for his statement, acknowledging the nuances of anti-Semitism with his steadfast commitment of fighting true anti-Semitism everywhere. But as families in Gaza relocate for the 10th time or are buried alive as they watch Israeli bombs decimate safe zones and tent camps, we wholeheartedly object to the premise that Jews are endangered by a video calling necessary attention to the hypocrisy of allowing a genocidal state to freely compete in the Olympics, or by impassioned pleas from labor leaders to end Israel's efforts to wipe Gaza off the map. And then this is a branch of CUPE 3930, again standing with Fred, calling for a reversal from the National CUPE office. And this is something that I actually remembered to put in the description box below. And this is an action people here can take. Stand with Fred. Send a message to CUPE now. Labor for Palestine calls on CUPE National Executive Board to reverse its call to CUPE. So yeah, just reverse all that. Let's see. Basically, it's send an email to CUPE now, just saying, now more than ever, we cannot allow our unions and union leaders to be outside interference. We know our collective strength is a threat to the Zionist regime, and we must remain steadfast in response to Zionist attack. The call for Fred Hahn's resignation represents a dangerous precedent for labor leaders who dare to take a principled position and speak out against power. It is a threat to the integrity of union democracy everywhere. Last October, racist supporters of Israel tried to force CUPE to make Fred Hahn resign. Thousands of people emailed CUPE leaders and prevented that from happening. We can do that again, but only if you act fast now. So I have linked this in the description box below. Their goal is 204,800 letters. So if you can, so if you're not in Canada, you can still send one by just stating what your union is, I guess, from the looks of it. And yeah, you can participate and make a stand against this. Let's see. I was going to get into this. Yes, unfortunately, there has been actual anti-Semitic attacks here in Canada. And of course, Justin Trudeau will make statements about that. And he just says, I'm disgusted at reports of the more than 100 Jewish institutions across Canada that were targeted by threats today. This is blatant anti-Semitism. The RCMP is in contact with local law enforcement to investigate and are working with them to keep Jewish Canadians safe. So there was what seems like a coordinated attack on a whole bunch of institutions that were Jewish with bomb threats and things of that sort. And that is wrong. That is anti-Semitic. But he's never sent out this type of statement when it comes to the Islamophobic attacks. Again, when it's the Palestinians who are being targeted, Justin Trudeau stays quiet. And this is Rabbi David, I don't know how to say his last name. Jewish Canadians will be safer when you stop supporting genocide in our name. No one knows who did this. Many other suspect threats against Jewish institutions have come from Jews to stir up anxiety and sympathy. Better hold your judgment until a few facts are known. And so, yeah, we don't know who did it yet. I know he's very outspoken about the genocide that's happening in Gaza, but again, this is just his opinion here. So take everything with a grain of salt until we know for sure who's responsible for these threats. But be nice if Justin Trudeau maybe made a statement about, you know, the anywhere between 40,000 and 180,000 people who have been killed in Gaza. And that is a wide number there, I know I just gave you, because there will be no way to know until people get in there after this is ended. The official number is over 40,000. That's just the people they've been able to count. As for the people that are buried under the rubble, who knows? And estimates are as high as almost 200,000 at this point. Okay. So, that's my thoughts on that. And let's get back to the Sandbox. So I readjust myself. Yeah, really feel tightness in my chest with this cough. It might be an actual cold. Let's see. Looks like there's some shenanigans going on in the Sandbox, so thank you mods for keeping the Sandbox clean. Soul Life, I'm here but have to lurk for a few minutes. Well, welcome, lurker. I lurk a lot on the videos that on the live streams I watch too, because I'm usually doing like 12 other things at the same time. So I'm usually watching Majority Report live when I can. Dan, the Power Report, Dan from the internet. Sometimes I'm watching the surfs, like all of them. I'm quite often lurking in the background as well. Looney Tunes 9000 says, welcome Raiders from the Bitchuation Room with Francesca Fiorentini. If you haven't already, subscribe to Franny Fio on YouTube and Twitch now. She is great. Love the segment of her pushing back against Jank on TYT. I still haven't posted that clip with me and Mike from the Humanist Report talking about it. I'm behind on clipping my videos, and then it gets so behind that I'm like, do I then clip them still? So let me know in the Sandbox if you still want me to clip that video of me and Mike talking about Francesca on TYT. And I'll make an effort to try to get it clipped this weekend. Crotchety, I thought it was going to be a comment on the mental gymnastics that Zionists go through. Like I said, it could have been like a very powerful meme to me. if they made a bigger distinction on the nation versus here's an individual with the Star of David. Yeah, it's to me that's a very important distinction because again, not all Jewish people are Zionists, not all Zionists are Jewish people, and I do push back a lot when I see people just say Jewish people blank when it comes to what's happening in Gaza, because plenty of Jewish people are horrified by what's happening there. Grand Theft Autobot. Fuck Duck Ford, I hate that guy. Oh, it's going to get so much worse. Oh my god, what he's just done will cost lives. I can't believe how many times I have done segments where I've said this thing from Doug Ford will cost people lives. And here's another one that will cost people their lives. It is so infuriating, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. Let's see. Bad Lefty, to be frank, that diver is representing the state of Israel. I think it's fine, and I understand that too. Quite often, the people who go to the Olympics are representing their nation. Still, I think there are other ways they could have communicated that to make it a little bit more separate, because there are a whole bunch of anti-Semitic people out there will just jump on that and use that for their own propaganda uses. But other ways of pointing out that maybe Israel shouldn't have been participating in the Olympics when they're, engaging in a genocide. Grand Theft Autobot, building Ontario or selling Ontario? If you're wondering about the Doug Ford story we're going to get into, it's not about either of those, actually. But it will absolutely cost people their lives. Grand Theft Autobot, Shao Convoys. Finish him! Yes, it's a Mortal Kombat reference. I do get that. LOL. Fatality. Yeah, so I can be against QP National for calling for Fred's resignation, but that statement against Doug Ford, damn, that went hard. Good. Oops. Grand Theft Autobot. I only care about conservatives as far as keeping them out of power in order to mitigate the damage to broken moral compasses. Command them to do. Command them to do? Oh, compel. There it is under there. So, in order to mitigate the damage their broken moral compasses compel them to do. My dogs are goth. Actual anti-Semitism is wrong. Accusing anti-Semitism when it isn't anti-Semitism is propaganda and harmful. Good evening to you, Carrie. Looney Tunes wants me to clip it. Okay, yes, we got a couple people saying that they want me to clip it. I will remember to clip it. Okay. So I want to get into maybe a couple shorter stories before I get into the big, long Doug Ford story. Let's see, I think there is one very much in particular I wanted to hit on. Yeah, this was kind of fun. And then we can watch a clip I haven't watched before. Should be interesting. So, Again, in my last news live stream, I made fun of a Conservative Party of Canada ad. That was just so bad. They actually had to delete it. It involved a whole bunch of stock footage. Almost none of it was from Canada. And apparently this ad was so bad, we got noticed. Canada's Conservative Party removes patriotic video mistakenly showing Russian fighter jets. CNN. Yes. You know you've made it when we've made it in the news, in the American news. Canada's Federal Conservative Party has removed a promotional video that was released over the weekend showing its leaders speaking patriotically while Russian fighter jets fly in the sky, according to CNN affiliate. The video purports to show a classic down-home Canadian scenes and landscapes, but has been widely criticized online for including footage from other countries. The video was removed. Mistakes happen, Sarah Fisher, Director of Communications for the Conservative Party of Canada, said Monday, according to CBC. Yes, mistakes can happen, but the amount of work they had to put into making these mistakes is astonishing. It's like they went out of their way to find stock footage that wasn't Canada. Like they literally could have just gone outside and gotten the stock footage that they wanted, but instead they paid for stock footage that was from 12 other countries. In the video, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre speaks about Canada fighter jets conducting training missions to defend our home and native land, but as his narration continues, the video shows what Canada Defense Minister identifies as Russian-made planes. Shockingly, Mr. Poilievre's dream for Canada includes Russian fighter jets flying over our glorious prairies on a training mission. This comes as Russia continues its illegal, unprovoked war choice against Ukraine and the international rules that keep us all safe. So, yeah, don't need to go much more into it, but I just find it funny that, like, here it is. The United States have noticed this mistake. It was so bad that it made American news. You know you've messed up when. But I also came across this, and I haven't watched it yet, so it could be a big nothing. But, you know, the tweet caught my attention. Trump tells Fox News that America is being threatened by an invasion from Canada. As a Canadian, I'll speak for all 24 of us. No, Americans do not need to worry about us invading. It's an invasion of our country taking place on our border, of our southern border. It's a total invasion. Okay, let's listen to this, shall we?
Country taking place at...
Oh, wow, this is so quiet. Let's see. Oh, volume is up. Sorry, the audio seems to be very quiet on this.
It's an invasion of our country taking place at our border, our southern border. It's a total invasion. And now it's starting at our northern border also, through Canada. And she didn't talk about any of that because she talks, but...
Yes, the invasion in the southern border is now happening through our northern border from Canada. Canada is invading. But you see, here's the actually ironic funny thing is that the largest number of people who overstay their visas in the United States are actually Canadian. So I guess kind of the largest group of people who overstay their visas in the United States are in fact Canadian. Oh no, it's the scary Canadians coming down with their poutines, maple syrup, and healthcare. Scary, scary stuff. They might be polite and say "A" to you and then laugh when you don't know what a toque is, eh?
Northern border also, through Canada. And she didn't talk about any of that because she talks, but she doesn't do. It's no action. But, you know, look, other than that, it was a nice-looking room. It's an invasion of...
Oh no, it's an invasion of the Canadians. The Canadians are coming. Nah. Sorry. Okay. I just wanted to play with that. A developing story. I'm not going to get too much into it right now because this is a developing story, and so I might be covering it more in another live stream, in my next live stream, because it has the potential of being a pretty big story. Locked out rail workers are demanding improved safety. For the first time in Canada's history, both its major railways have stopped operating after employees shut out workers early Thursday morning. And this is from Rabble, CA, a reliable outlet, and it is in the news. So, update, the federal government has forced both parties into binding arbitration to resolve the issue and have ordered the work stoppage to end immediately. Canada Labor Congress. Okay, so it was the CEOs, the people in power, that have locked out the workers for the first time in Canada's history. And it's both major railways have stopped operating. This is pretty bad. It will have a huge impact here in Canada if that's the case. And I saw a headline somewhere saying that the workers do plan on going on strike Monday. So like I said, this isn't a developing story, but it's a very important story for us Canucks to stay invested in. And so this is from David, a reliable source on the hostile fart sauna, a journalist. This disruption is because of employer and greed. It's because of employer greed. If you're looking for someone to blame, that's who. Breaking, CN Rail has officially locked out their employees. So it's the company locking out their employees, not the employees going on strike yet. One of the two major Canadian railways is now closed for business. Again, this, when it comes to like trade and movement of goods across the country, wow, this will have a huge impact. So it's important for Canadians to stay plugged into this. Actually, how long is... Oh, there's a little clip. Let's see if it says anything useful. It's not too long.
Concerns and a forced relocation. Freight across the country could be just hours away from a standstill.
There has been, I would say, some movement, but both parties remain apart on the key issues.
The union, representing over 9,000 employees from both CN and CP railways, still can't agree on scheduling issues, safety concerns, and a forced relocation plan proposed by CN, making it increasingly likely Canada could be headed for a major economic shutdown at 12:01 Thursday morning.
It is totally unacceptable.
Like whenever there's a port that is shut down, the government freaks out because of what that does to trade. Having the railways shut down, that's like across the country shutting down of economic trade. Like again, it's pretty bad.
Acceptable for us as a country to sabotage ourselves right now.
Sabotage that the federal government could stop. Labour Minister Steve McKinnon has rejected requests from the railways for binding arbitration and won't speculate on the potential for back-to-work legislation.
I'm not going to get into those kinds.
The Liberal Party has always been more than happy in the past to push through back-to-work legislation when it comes to striking workers. The Liberal Party is not the friends of unions.
Kinds of what ifs, but Parliament isn't sitting, and Parliament is not something that can be recalled on a dime.
McKinnon, who met with union and CP representatives today, does not seem optimistic of a last-second compromise.
I think it's fair to say there are significant issues that remain to be resolved.
A sentiment displayed through the party's public barbs, CN saying tonight the Teamsters have shown an inability or unwillingness to negotiate seriously.
That is a lie. That is indicative of the type of attitude this company has had since the very beginning.
If a last-second deal can't be reached, over $1 billion worth of goods a day would be stuck. And potentially the most concerning shortage, chlorine, used to disinfect drinking water and moved almost exclusively by rail.
If this disruption were to last for more than a few weeks, it could lead to things like, water restrictions.
While rail stoppages have happened before, CN and CP have never both shut down at the same time, making Thursday's potential stoppage the first of its kind in over 100 years. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal if that happens. So I'll keep updated with that story and report as needed. Okay, I just want to touch on this other story, and then we'll get into the big Doug Ford story, because this, again, Doug Ford is just so bad as a business person. So bad. Doug Ford shifts direction on wind power in Ontario. 6 years after scrapping projects, PC government reopens door to green energy. He cost the province millions and millions and millions and millions by scrapping green energy projects that were already in the works. And now he's like, I guess these were important. So let's spend millions and millions and millions reactivating them. One of Doug Ford's first acts as Premier of Ontario, just days after taking office in 2018, was cancelling more than 750 renewable energy projects, including a large wind farm that was already partially built. Fast forward to today, and Ford's progressive conservative government is poised to oversee the biggest expansion of green energy that the province has seen in nearly a decade. Keep in mind, most of that decade, Doug Ford has been in power, so that kind of makes sense that it would be the largest in that. Doug Ford has laid out plans to produce an additional 5,000 megawatts of renewable energy by 2034. By comparison, the capacity of the wind power projects currently installed across the province totals about 4,900 megawatts. An additional, okay. The move makes for one of the most dramatic policy shifts from a government that has had its fair share of U-turns. The expansion is driven by the anticipated rise in demand for electricity in Ontario, as well as demand from many companies that their electricity supply be as emission-free as possible, along with falling costs of producing wind and solar energy. But the plan is almost certain to face some opposition, particularly when it comes to wind power. So just imagine that. Imagine this, that there would be demands from companies that electricity supply be as emission-free as possible, and that the cost of producing it would fall. If only we had like a crystal ball and could have seen that coming. Like, of course. It's the whole, having seaside real estate and having to sell it in the future. It's like, well, who are you going to sell it to? Aquaman? Like, of course, green energy is going to be needed in the future. We just know that. We've already known that because of the strains on power. We've already gone through the power outages, the brownouts here, because, especially in the summer where we get into these massive heat waves and everyone is using their AC to stay alive. Of course. But it's just, again, millions was sent when he canceled these projects that were already underway. And now millions more will be spent reactivating them. Just complete waste of money, a waste of time. He is such a bad businessman. And yet that's, again, it's like the whole Donald Trump thing. Oh, he's such a good businessman. Look at what he does. It's like, no, he's horrible. He's horrible. He is like the worst when it comes to this sort of stuff. Okay, quickly check the sandbox again. Try to take a few deep breaths. And then we'll get into the big story that I have planned for today. See, how am I doing for time? It's not going to be a 5-hour long stream, Looney Tunes. Let's see. Welcome, everyone, to the Sandbox who's just showing up. I appreciate you all. Soul Life saying it'll have a huge impact on the US as well. Where do you think we get our lumber from? Canada Rail. Yeah, it's to shut down the rails in Canada is just devastating. It is devastating. And hopefully, like it's happened the last few times that there's been like big strikes, people actually started blaming the right people, as in the corporations that caused the strikers to strike for not doing like bare minimum, oh, we'll give you guys a raise, we'll give you more security and stuff like that. So there's been a lot more support for strikers as of late. So hopefully if the rails workers go on strike, the support goes behind them and not the corporations. Looney Tunes 9000, drink lots of water to cure that cold, Sandy. I'll try. Soul Life demands 6 hours. Grand Theft Autobot. I've never hear about Ford being a good businessman unless that is somehow stereotype conservative have. Yeah, he is horrible. Just horrible at anything business related. And yet, again, so many people is like, oh, well, since he's a millionaire businessman, he must know how to run a province. But he was born into that. Like, that's the thing. He was born into that wealth. He didn't do it himself. He was just born into it. Okay. So I'm going to get into a story now about you'll hear this in two phrases. So safe consumption sites and supervised consumption sites. They're basically the same thing. The more appropriate term I think is supervised consumption sites, or SCS for short. And these sites save lives. They absolutely save lives. And Doug Ford has just shut down more than half of the ones in this province. This will cost lives. So I've put together a whole bunch of information because one of my frustrations with Canadian media is there's no one article you can go to that will give you all the information you want. You have to kind of pick pieces here and there. So I have like a whole bunch of articles I want to get to, but just bits and pieces of them to give everyone like a very full and broad story as to what is happening and how this is going to impact people. And you know, even as I'm looking at this YouTube video that I'm about to play, there's another one off to the side in the recommend saying gravely concerned Thunder Bay's only safe drug injection site being shut down. You know, when you get to the northern areas and their only safe supervised consumption sites are being shut down, where do you think those people are going to go? What do you think is going to happen to them? So we'll start with a video. And then we'll get into some news headlines, more video, back to Doug Ford at that horrendous press conference he gave. And I might end up jumping around if I realized I missed something that I wanted to get to in one of the articles. So please forgive me with that. Especially being sick, I'm probably not going to be too... There's a word in my head that I can't think of right now. Probably like clear-headed or something. But yeah, this is just a devastating, devastating story. And like I said, this will cost lives. So we'll start with this from CBC News.
This was taken in 2017, maybe a year before he passed away.
Marie McKenna thinks of her son Corey every day, but especially on August 20th.
Today would have been his 35th birthday.
Corey Smigelski died of fentanyl poisoning 6 years ago, one of the more than 40,000 Canadian victims of the opioid crisis.
For 4 years, he tried and tried and tried to get clean from this very, very toxic drug.
Now a major change in how Ontario deals with the toxic drug crisis, the province banning all supervised consumption sites within 200 meters of schools and childcare centres.
The cycle of addiction is not being broken by using drug consumption sites.
There are 17 of
Only, yeah, they are. And like the thing is that a lot of the locations for these consumption sites are in areas where they're needed, where there's high drug use, where they're accessible to people, where it's by other resources that people need. Like these aren't just randomly placed by a school. They're in areas where they would best serve the public.
these sites across Ontario, where users can get their drugs tested for toxins and get emergency care in case of an overdose. 10 will now be shut down. The province ordered a review of all the sites after Toronto mom Carolina Hubner-Macarat was killed outside one, hit by a stray bullet in what police say was a battle between drug dealers.
Not sold on these safe injections.
And that is a tragic, horrible story, but it's not necessarily related to the safe consumption site. It was a drug war. Again, these sites are in areas that have problems already. They don't bring new problems to an area. They help people who already live in those areas. And it is a tragic story of what happened to her. But to blame it on the safe consumption site that's busy saving lives is so disingenuous and so harmful. And it stigmatizes the people who then go and use these sites.
In what police say was a battle between drug dealers.
Not sold on these safe injection sites that are in neighborhoods that needles are all flown around. It's a haven for drug dealers, in my opinion.
The province is instead promising 19 new addiction treatment.
In his opinion. Did you catch that? He said in his opinion. We're going to get into how many experts were participating in this, but that's just his opinion that these aren't safe places, all the needles and things of that sort. And then point out, oh, well, maybe there's a needle in the park. Do you know what I remember coming across in parks the most when I was a kid? Beer bottles. All the time in parks. And sometimes those beer bottles were smashed into bits and pieces in the sand. That's what I remember. I don't remember needles all over the place, and I'm sure that is a problem in some areas, but it's this double standard that Doug Ford has that is so disgusting, because here it is, oh no, drugs are so bad, and yet he's expanding the use of alcohol. You know, he's making it so people can go to a 7-Eleven, sit down and get drunk. Bars are supervised consumption sites for alcohol. What do you think would happen if suddenly you shut down all the bars? Where do you think those people would go to drink? What do you think would happen to the neighborhoods if there was suddenly nowhere for people to go to have alcohol? If there weren't people that were required to have their smart serve in order to serve alcohol, what do you think would start happening? And he's expanding those because it lines the pockets of his buddies. Like, I'm surprised he's not pushing to legalize drugs so that he can line the pockets of more of his buddies who will then get into that business. But because the sale of alcohols will help line the pockets of his buddies, he's expanding those. And I guarantee you a lot of those places where you have supervised consumption of alcohol are within 200 meters of a school. You know, there's no restrictions on those.
Dealers, in my opinion.
The province is instead promising 19 new addiction treatment hubs with supportive housing.
They will not provide safe supply, supervised drug.
So if you're not going to supply safe supply, what does that leave you with? If you're not going to make sure that the supply they have is safe, then you're going to leave people with unsafe supply. But I'll let her finish her statement because it's really, really horrible what she's saying.
The province is instead promising 19 new addiction treatment hubs with supportive housing.
They will not provide safe supply, supervised drug consumption, or needle exchange programs.
It's absolutely.
So basically nobody will use them that's in need. Like you're saying, you have to go cold turkey from your addiction in order to come here to get help. That's not the best way to encourage people to go to that facility to get help. It's not. You can't tell people to just, cut off your escape, because a lot of people are, in depression, despair, things of that sort. It's the only way that they can cope with their reality. You can't tell them to take away their one coping mechanism, their addiction, to fight that when they're in vulnerable situations. It needs to be multi-layered help. But to have them shipped off into some location where, at any slight transgression, they would be kicked out. Like if they would monitor the drugs that go, like they would monitor people to make sure drugs don't get in. If you get caught using drugs, then you would get kicked out of the program. A lot of these programs have things like curfews, and you're taken away from your connections, your friends, your family, all that sort of stuff. You're isolated away from them. Like that's what a lot of these programs do. And for some people that could work. So it's not that these are horrible things to put in place, but it should be another thing that they use along with supervised consumption sites. Both options should be available. It's not an either or thing.
Callous and it's negligent.
This community worker says Ontario's move will make drug use more dangerous.
We want to make sure that toxic drugs are not killing people, and in this case, we're going to see a lot more death as a result of this scheme.
Marie McKenna believes the supervised consumption site could have saved her son.
If Corey had had that drug tested that day, he'd be alive today.
Instead, his mom marks another birthday without him. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
Just horrible. So 10 out of the 17 supervised consumption sites across Ontario are being shut down. More than half. So from CP24, detrimental impacts, Ontario announces closure of 10 supervised drug consumption sites. So this is just more information on the whole situation. The province's decision to close 10 sites offering supervised consumption services, SCS, across Ontario, including 5 in Toronto, will have far-reaching detrimental impact on our communities, says the chair of the Board of Health, City's Board of Health. Last year, there were 524 opiate intoxicity deaths in Toronto. 524. People died from this. It's clear that more action is needed from all orders of government to assist this crisis, said Toronto City Councillor Chris Mose, who added that these sites provide critical services to people who use drugs and have saved countless lives in Toronto and across the province. And as that woman was saying in the previous video, had that one time her son had taken those drugs, had it been tested to make sure that it was, not mixed with other things that could be potentially lethal, he could still be alive. And that means, it's a matter of surviving to the next day and the next day and the next day until finally something happens that can help you break out of that cycle. And it can take a lot of time and a lot of work. But when you remove these safe consumption sites, you run the risk of dying. And when you're dead, you don't have the ability to get better. That's not rocket science there. But this will just end up with so many more people dying that will never get the chance to get to a place where they can finally be addiction free. And I'll feature somebody else who went through this process, who almost died many times over. And these safe consumption sites, these supervised consumption sites, they do more than just, here's a place where you can shoot up. They offer supports, they offer help, counseling and all that sort of stuff. It's not like, oh, just come in here, shoot up and walk out. They have the resources so that when the person is ready, they can go in and get the help that they need. To try to force this on people does not work, because you have to wait until that person is in a situation where they're able to go through the trauma of beating these addictions. And you can't, to shut down these sites, where are they going to go? Because those rooms that they're offering and those other things, again, they'd have to go cold turkey. They'd have to be taken away from their communities. And I can guarantee you the wait list to get into those homes will be extraordinarily long. So what are they supposed to do in the meantime? So research indicates that SCS are successful in reducing drug-related harms. They provide immediate response to overdoses, which significantly reduce death rates. They also reduce public drug use and associate issues such as discarded needles. Let's see. Closing supervised consumption services will not stop people from using drugs. If sites are forced to close, we will see more public drug use in our parks and in our laneways. We will see more discarded needles on the streets. We will see increased risk of transmission of infection diseases due to shared needles such as HIV, Hep C, and we will see more overdoses and deaths. In a joint statement, Mayor Olivia Chow said any change to evidence-based harm reduction programs should be in consultation with Toronto Public Health. So read her joint statement with Chris here. Last year alone, there were 524 opiate toxicity deaths in Toronto. There's no question that more provincial funding for treatment services and supportive housing is necessary and welcome. We urgently need more provincial support to help people access treatment, housing, and social services. However, any change to evidence-based harm reduction programs should be made in consultation with Toronto Public Health. Should be made in consultation with? So are you saying it wasn't? That Doug Ford just did this without consulting? Shocker. And you'd be shocked when you hear him say, we were talking to all the experts about it, as we'll get into. But yeah, so the statement continues, we are concerned that the provincial closure of existing harm reduction services will have significant consequences, such as more overdoses, strain on police, fire, paramedics, and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to get down to province mandates new requirements for remaining SCS sites. In an August 20 news release, the province said it would also implementing new protections to better protect community safety in the vicinity of remaining sites, including new requirements for safety and security plans and new policies discourage loitering and promote conflict de-escalation and community engagement. This will entail requiring consumption and treatment services as provincially funded sites are called upon the province to work with local police. Okay. No, this is where I wanted to go to. Sorry about this. Again, a little bit discombobulated with all this. Aside from shutting down supervised consumption sites near schools and childcare centers and mandating additional safety and security measures at the remaining ones, the Ontario government also said that it would be introducing new legislation this fall that aims to prohibit municipalities or any organization from standing up new consumption sites or participating in safer supply programs. So they're going to ban the creation of them, regardless of where they are. So a lot of these sites that are being closed down, they can't just then move further away from the school or something, because they're going to be prevented from going up in the first place. This soon-to-be proposed legislation also calls for the prohibition from municipalities from applying for drug decriminalization exemptions from the federal government. So sometimes the conservative governments get so bad that the federal government has to do workarounds to help municipalities. So they bypass, the provincial government and go straight to the municipalities to help them out with instances. And here they're saying, no, we're going to also try to pass legislation that will prevent the federal government from stepping in and helping these municipalities with what they deem is best for their community. So here is Doug Ford forcing his will on municipalities. He's ignoring what these municipalities are saying are the best use of their resources, the best way that they have to combat the issue of drug use. So ban on supervised consumption sites closes locations for government previously approved. Many of the supervised consumption sites, and this is from Global News, many of the supervised consumption sites where addicts can safely take drugs to avoid risk of overdose were approved by the very same government that's now looking to shut them down amid public safety concerns. So again, this is another massive U-turn from Doug Ford, because this is something he was already okay with, but now suddenly, with the expansion of the alcohol to all these stores, he wants to get rid of these. Funny coincidence, that is. In fact, more than half the 10 sites announced for closure by Health Minister Sylvia Jones on Tuesday were opened and funded by the Ford government in early 2019 as politicians grappled with provincial overdose crisis. Despite opening and funding many of the centers and now plans to close, the government said its new policy was about doing more to protect public safety. The policy shift unveiled Tuesday means supervised consumption sites within 200 meters of schools or child facilities will be closed by next March. The policy has been criticized by proponents of the facilities, which say they have saved countless lives from fatal overdoses that have become more common with increasingly contaminated drug supply. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to get to in this particular article before moving on? Other than, again, just complete waste of provincial resources, of money, complete U-turn, turning his back on so many people from this province who are struggling. I think that's what I wanted to get to in this article. Again, sorry, there's like so much information on this, and it kind of goes in an order to make sense. I try to put it in a narrative so that all the dots are connected and you get all of the information. So then there was this statement from Doug Ford on the hostile fart sauna. Doug Ford, it's talking again. I don't understand what it is about these, fascist right-wingers and talking about themselves in the third person. It makes no sense to me. Like, if I ever start, doing my live stream saying, Sandy is now going to be talking about safe consumption supply, and Sandy is feeling sick today, help me. Like, there's probably something wrong if I start talking about myself in the third person like that. Anyway, Doug Ford believes in rehabilitation and being responsible in all areas of government. Doug will work with the experts to get where we need to go. He will work to save lives and help people. Well, the supervised consumption sites are saving lives and helping people. And he says, I do not support injection sites, but I do support rehabilitation programs that get people off drugs. I will work with the experts. He'll work with the experts, he says, and get to where we need to go. Save lives and help people. Doug Ford says that he will work with experts. Experts did not recommend closing Leslieville drug consumption site. Consumption treatment services are a necessary public health service, says report commissioned by province. So this is from a report commissioned by the province. The Ontario government's decision to shutter multiple supervised drug consumption sites in Toronto runs counter to the expert opinions it sought about one of those sites. So closing this, so he says, I will work with the experts. So he says he will work with them. He never said anything about actually listening to them and following their cues, I guess, is what it is. So the Ontario government's decision to counter to the experts' opinions it sought about one of those sites. After Carolina was fatally hit by a stray bullet while walking in Leslieville in July 2023, the Ministry of Health commissioned 2 reviews into supervised consumption and treatment services operated out of the South Riverdale Community Health Centre. The 2 reviews were quietly posted online earlier this week. Both of them recommended changes to the operations of the center, and both recommended the province expand harm reduction resources, consumption and treatment services included. Evidence shows that consumption treatment services are necessary public health service implemented to save lives and prevent accidental overdose death, says the SRCHC Supervisor's report dated April 2024. So the experts are saying, yeah, sure, do this other program that you're thinking of, you know, where people can get locked away and go cold turkey and stuff. Because again, like I'm saying it a bit dismissively, but those types of programs do help some people, so they are valuable. But here's the report saying, well, we should also be expanding consumption and treatment services. And Doug Ford is not listening to those experts. He's working with them, not listening to them. More from Global News. Didn't talk to us in advance. Ontario supervised consumption site surprised by shutdown. Bill Sinclair was surprised and upset when he saw the name of the Toronto Overdose Prevention Centre he runs included on a list of similar facilities in Ontario the government has ordered to close. So he didn't even talk to the people who run these sites. But he's so sure in his opinion that they're bad. He didn't talk to the experts. He didn't talk to the people who run these sites. The Kensington Market Overdose Prevention Site, run by Neighbourhood Group Community Services in Toronto, is one of 10 sites across the province that will be forced to close before next April because they're located close to either a school or daycare center. I was surprised about the entire announcement, Sinclair, CEO of Neighbourhood Group Community Services, told Global News. They didn't talk to us in advance. They didn't contact us before, since, or after. So who was he talking to exactly? Who? Well, maybe he was talking to CAMH, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. That's a very well-known organization here in Ontario. It's very prominent. Read our statement in response to today's announcement about supervised consumption sites in Ontario. CAMH statement about the loss. Okay, so they welcome the government's investment today in housing and addiction treatment hubs. Those are those heart buildings that they were talking about earlier. We hope that this investment will be used to improve access to treatment and implement novel approaches that meet people where they are. And again, I'm a fan of that. Expand the different ways people can get help because different people require different supports. However, we are concerned to see the closure of several supervised consumption sites. Supervised consumption and needle exchange programs are essential healthcare services. They are evidence-based and life-saving interventions known to reduce the incident of fatal overdose, help reduce the transmission of HIV, hepatitis C, and other bloodborne infections, and increase referrals to treatment. They are a necessary part of comprehensive response to the drug toxicity crisis. The loss of supervised consumption sites and needle exchange programs will cause harm to people, communities across the province, but put pressure on other parts of the healthcare system, including already busy emergency departments, emergency medical services. We hope the Ontario government will maintain these services as part of the new hub model. Seriously, who did he talk to? Who? Let's see. I think, yeah, that's in there. Okay. From the sounds of it, he wasn't talking to any experts related to the field. He wasn't talking to the people who run these sites. He wasn't talking to mental health professionals. He wasn't talking to experts. So what experts was he talking to? Was he talking to the experts who run corporations that are like, yeah, this doesn't help us with profit, so we don't want them around. Instead, just go and expand all the alcohol. Expand it so that, because it's not like there's a problem with drunk driving in this province. He bought those 5 new helicopters for $134 million to help with drunk driving. Because, yeah, that's how you stop drunk driving, is with police copters. There's an issue with drunk driving in this province and intoxicated people and people getting drunk, going home, abusing people. There's bar fights. That's a problem. People who are drunk and get into accidents. That's a problem. But all of that is okay. But safe consumption sites that save lives, that's not okay. Those are the harbingers of destruction and despair in communities, not a way to help support them, according to him, in his opinion. And if this wasn't making you mad enough, he had more to say about it at that press conference he was at earlier when asked about it. And to put it quite plainly, Doug Ford is an asshole.
Please identify yourself by name and outlet. It'll be one question, one follow-up. First question.
Thank you. Premier Mark McAllister from City News.
Hi, Mark.
Obviously, there's a number of questions from my colleagues and I about the announcement yesterday regarding the safe consumption sites. At this point, it sounds as though you want them to make the transition into the heart hubs, as has been announced as well. Just curious what your thoughts are. How do people who refuse treatment go about making that transition themselves? How do you get them into programs and services that you want them to get into?
Well,
Yeah, good question. You do that by having a place that they can go to that they feel safe and secure at, that they can have their drugs tested to make sure that there's nothing in it that would be extra harmful. And then you support them over time so that they get comfortable with people and actually feel like they can turn to them for help, as opposed to, just plucking them out of their communities and throwing them into one of these heart hubs. Kind of what those supervised consumption sites offer.
Something I just don't believe these safe consumption
is that you go about making that transition themselves. How do you get them into programs and services that you want them to get into?
Well, something I just don't believe these safe consumption sites. I've listened to the people and
Yeah, I've heard stuff. I just don't believe it. I choose not to believe it, is what he's saying, basically. It's just his opinion. He doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe these sites help, despite overwhelming evidence that they do. It's kind of like people who just still choose to not believe in climate change. It doesn't matter, that the forests by their homes are burning down every year. It doesn't matter all the flooding and storms that are happening. I choose not to believe in this whole climate change stuff. Well, here he is, the premier of this province, just choosing not to believe in safe consumption sites. It's just his opinion, because he's an expert on this. And in actuality, he is, because those of you might remember his brother, the crack-smoking mayor of Toronto. I don't know for sure if it was him or his brother. I don't remember the articles, but there is a strong indication they dealt drugs. that they were in the drug dealing aspect of the drug usage as well. Don't quote me on it. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly confident I remember those headlines.
The neighborhoods, I've consulted with them. I've been getting endless phone calls
that you want them to get into.
Well, you know something, I just don't believe these safe consumption sites. I've listened to the people in the neighborhoods. I've consulted with them. I've been...
Didn't talk to us in advance. Experts did not recommend. So he didn't consult them and he didn't listen to them.
Getting endless phone calls about needles being in the parks.
So here he is again with those endless phone calls. We just heard him say the exact same thing when it came to people wanting Fred Hahn to step down from as union leader. Doug Ford saying, I'm getting all these phone calls about it. Here he is now saying the exact same thing. I'm getting all these phone calls about it. Prove it. Prove it. Okay? Like, he just says this as like, oh, I heard somewhere on some forum. No, prove it. It is just, and you know what? And still, even if he was, so what? You know what? A lot of NIMBYs won't want any sort of safe consumption sites within like a half-hour driving distance of their home. You know, you can't listen to the people that aren't directly affected by these things. People who are just upset that, you know, it might make part of their neighborhood a little less appealing to them. Like, those aren't the people, those aren't the experts you should be listening to. It's the people whose lives are in danger, whose lives will be saved by these sites. The experts in mental health and addictions. Those are the people you should be listening to, not some fucking NIMBY that is upset that there might be one somewhere in their neighborhood that they would never know if they walked by it.
Needles being by the schools and by the daycare, that's unacceptable.
So when you get rid of the needle exchange programs that these sites offer, where do you think those needles are going to go that people end up using? It's not rocket science here. These sites help prevent needles from getting onto the streets.
What we believe in these heart hubs is we're putting $378 million into supporting people with primary care, mental health services, addiction care and support, social services, employment support, shelter and transition beds, supportive housing and other supplies and services.
The wait list for these programs will be astronomical, and we'll get a little bit more into what these programs are in a different article. But a lot of the mental health issues, like treatments, should already be available to people. They're not. Housing, supports, access to full health care, you know, not having to live on the streets, all of that would help with the reduction of drug use. You know, not having incomes that doesn't leave you in dire poverty. All of that would help with drug addictions. It's a societal issue. It can't just be fixed by grabbing a few people off the street and putting them into these heart houses hubs that he has. You have to deal with the underlying cause of it.
Including naloxone and on-site showers. So, you know, giving someone, an addict, a place to do their injections, we haven't seen it get better. This was supposed to be the great...
It got better. It got better by giving them a safe place to do their injections. And again, what's the counter of that? Oh, a safe place for them to do this versus what? Not safe places for them to do this. What is better in that situation? A safe place for them to use their drugs or a not safe place for them to use their drugs? Which is better?
Greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the worst thing to give someone, an addict, a place to do their injections. We haven't seen it get better. This was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's the worst thing that could ever happen to a community.
I hate his folkiness. This was supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Who said that? Who? That's not a thing. It's not a thing.
To have one of these safe injection sites in their neighborhood. The other problem I have was with the federal government.
Ooh,
you know,
here we go.
Safe Supply. They get to go up there and get endless amounts of drugs. And guess what they do? They go out and they sell it and get other people addicted. And then they go and get even stronger drugs. But as far as I'm concerned, the federal...
So he's accusing the federal government of just handing out drugs to people who want them. That's not how that works. That's not a thing. People don't go to the federal government just to be given drugs that they can then turn around and sell. That's not a thing. He is lying. This is just a flat out lie. This isn't a thing. People don't go to safe consumption sites, to the federal government, to get safe drugs, as he says, safe drugs, and then turn around and sell them. That's not how it happens. Nothing like that happens. And here he is just lying about it. And do you think the reporters are going to push back on this? Do you think they're going to fact check him on the spot? Of course not.
Federal government, they get to go up there and get endless amounts of drugs. And guess what they do? They go out and they sell it and get other people addicted.
Do you know what? It would be nice if we could rely on the federal government to get all the drugs we need. You know, pharmacare. That would be nice. Like, seriously, I can't get my prescriptions for free. But he's here saying, oh yeah, people just get like endless supplies of drugs. Really? It would be nice if we could actually have an endless supply of drugs in this country. You know, pharmacare. That would be nice. It would be nice.
And then they go and get even stronger drugs. But as far as I'm concerned, the federal government's the biggest drug dealer in the entire country. It's unacceptable. It needs to stop. We need to get rid of Safe Supply. We need to put money into treatment.
We need to get rid of Safe Supply. Safe Supply. We need to get rid of the Safe Supply. Again, what's the counter to that? What's the opposite? Unsafe supply. We need to let them have the drugs that will more likely kill them, that have additives to it to make them stronger, you know, things that make them far more deadly. You know, we need to be making sure that these people get unsafe supply as opposed to safe supply.
As far as I'm concerned, the federal government's the biggest drug dealer in the entire country. It's unacceptable. It needs to stop. We need to get rid of Safe Supply. We need to put money into treatment, detox beds. That's what we need to do, not continue to giving people free drugs.
You know what? Free drugs in this country would be a nice thing. That's not what he's talking about, is it? It's just unbelievable that he can get up on stage and lie like that. Just blatantly lie like that, and nobody is pushing back. Like, where's the journalist saying, can you point out exactly where it is that the government is giving, you know, the federal government is giving unlimited drugs to people? That there's like, what, no regulation around that? You know, the liberals famously known for lack of regulations. Can you point out exactly where people are going to get this unlimited supply of drugs that they then turn around and sell? Why aren't the reporters pushing back on that? It simply doesn't happen. But let's actually get to some of the facts, the data, the actual research on this. So this is from the Government of Canada webpage. Supervised consumption sites, understanding the data. And this was last updated August 22nd of this year. So just yesterday. It was updated yesterday. This. Data on supervised consumption sites in Canada, including number of visits, client demographics, client safety, drug use, and overdoses. So what they track, total numbers of visits, numbers of different clients, all that sort of stuff. And then they have the definition and the indicators. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Oh, service referral provided. Oh, any referral made on health or service supports not directly related to drug consumption that are offered within the same building as the SCS, but not in the SCS space, for example, SCS, which is attached to a community health center. This can include wound care, testing for STBBI, sexually transmitted and bloodborne infections, primary health care, mental health care, food and shelter services, legal aid, employment assistance, and other services. So a lot of these consumption sites are near these resources that people tend to need. Service referrals provided offsite. So, okay, so this tracks all the referrals that people are being given. The average visits per day, drugs used. So this is tracking all of that, data limitations. Each SCS provides standardized data report to Health Canada every month prior to March 2020. Okay, interesting. Some related links, contact. But there was something in here that was very interesting. Where is it? Like I said, I'm a little bit discombobulated, but there is something very interesting in... here we go. Non-fatal overdoses. Number of drug overdoses that took place in an SCS. So this is being tracked during the reporting period and which did not result in death. To date, nobody has died of an overdose in an SCS in Canada. I'm sorry, when was this updated? Oh, yesterday. Okay, so this was updated yesterday. So at these sites, to date, as of yesterday, nobody has died of an overdose in an SCS in Canada. Not just Ontario, but in Canada. And he's closing these sites down. There were plenty of drug overdoses in these sites, and those people were saved. They got to live another day. Hopefully, they live long enough to get to the point where they're ready to receive treatment. But to date, nobody has died of an overdose in an SCS in Canada. And he's just shutting that down. All those lives saved will, so many people will die as a result of this. And this is from Trillium. It's a long article, lots of detail, and is a good resource. So Ford government to close 10 supervised consumption sites, ban new ones in favor of hub model. But I wanted to get down to that section that I had up on screen. Treatment unavailable to many advocates. So Kola and Zoe Dodd, a harm reduction worker and researcher in Toronto, each said they'd welcome increase in treatment, which is currently difficult to access, as has gotten worse under the Ford government, according to Kola. So, normal treatment is difficult to access and has gotten worse. Because remember, Doug Ford likes to cut back on healthcare and treatment and mental health care and all that sort of stuff. Programs which would have been helping a lot of these people. But it's been getting a lot worse under Doug Ford. It tends to be one of those things that gets announced in good news announcements and then never actually turns into anything on the ground. So that heart hub that he's been talking about. Believe it when you see it. They've announced it, but, the Liberals do this a lot too. They like to announce things, but then never get around to actually enacting those things. But everyone remembers the announcement and nobody pays attention to the fact that it never actually went through. So with these heart hubs that he has, believe it when you see it, because he loves to announce these things. There's no guarantee it's actually going to happen. Dodd said she's helped multiple people access treatment. To get into residential treatment, you must have detox, she said. Someone in Toronto might do so at CAMH. So that was the, it was over here. That's the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. So someone in Toronto might do so at CAMH, one of the small handfuls of detox sites in the province with medical staff on hand, she said. But after 10 to 12 days, that person will be released to wait for 6 to 12 months for a treatment bed. So they go to this place to get detox, but then to actually deal with the underlying addiction can take another year. In that time, without any other proper supports, most people go back to using drugs, she said. And that's in Toronto. The treatment journey for someone in Timmins, which still has residential treatment facility and hospital, can be 1,500 kilometers, its mayor said. It's even more difficult in rural Ontario. It's a very broken system, Dodd said. It's not like right on the spot someone will talk to you and have something for you. That does not exist anywhere, she said. Every day, people are voluntarily trying to get the support they need, whether through the medical system, hospitals, CAMH, wherever, and they can't. And from a mental health perspective, I can contest to this, that I have been in mental health crises, like severe needing help. And I have tried to access help in those instances, and nothing has been available to me. The programs simply don't exist, or there's not enough room. Treatment also varies in quality around the province, the experts said. One might be able to skip the line with a $30,000 treatment center, but it might not have medical staff on hand, Dodd said. Otherwise, a free 12-step program might be their only option, she said. And then people are told that they're failures because they don't do well in these programs. But actually, the programs haven't changed. They're quite archaic and built off a model that was created in the 1950s, Dodd said. While treatment beds are important, clinical guidelines say the first line of treatment is opioid agnostic therapy, which is medication included Suboxone and methadone, ideally combined with counseling, said Leah Simone, the Associate Medical Officer of Health at the Simone Muskoka Health Unit. In my opinion, everyone in Ontario who has an opioid use disorder should have access to that kind of treatment, she said, speaking at the AMO opioid panel. There is no debate. CTS sites save lives, connected, so consumption treatment sites save lives, connect people to services. Toronto's the Workers site has intervened in over 2,300 overdoses since it opened. Ottawa's Somerset West has stopped 1,700, Cola said. CTS sites have been studied all over the world, added Simone. Bottom line is there's really no scientific debate. It works, she said, adding that it lowers rates of overdose, death, and bloodborne infections. And importantly, we know it increases the likelihood of them connecting with other services when they want it. People are going to die because of what Doug Ford did. And it's not just Doug Ford. It's any province with conservative leaders. It's the federal government. Like, Pierre Poilievre wants to get rid of these sites across the board, across Canada. It's conservatives that want to punish people for being addicts in the first place. Because that's all that's going to happen is they get punished. But the circumstances that led to them having the addiction is never dealt with. But like I said, it's not just Ontario. So this is from The Breakdown, a wonderful site, Twitter follow from Alberta. So Danielle Smith, that's the Premier of Alberta, said the quiet part out loud. On Friday, she said she would use the notwithstanding clause to implement her Compassionate Care Act. And we'll get a little bit more into what that was, which is a tacit admission that forced treatment is unconstitutional. So she wants to use the notwithstanding clause. And what the notwithstanding clause does is supersedes people's constitutional rights in this country. So when the courts, settle in favor of people's constitutional rights, the notwithstanding clause can be used to override people's rights. And by saying she's going to use this, is admitting that these forced treatments is unconstitutional.
Part of what the Sovereignty Act is attempting to do is to be a notwithstanding clause on federal law. Because the notwithstanding clause is written in a weird way. The only time you can use the notwithstanding clause is to protect your own legislation. Now, we may have to use it on the Compassionate Care Act, because if we're ordering people into care for 90 to 120 days.
If we're ordering people into care for 90 to 120 days. Remember the Compassionate Care Act in the article? It's forced treatment. It is forcing people into treatment centers. If we're ordering people into care.
The federal or the courts might not like that.
Yeah, the courts might not like that if you force people into that, huh? Yeah, courts might not like that. Yeah, they might not like you trampling on people's constitutional rights.
That would be the kind of case where we would say, notwithstanding what the court says, we think it's important to order people into care.
Notwithstanding what the court says. Notwithstanding what the court says. So even though the court rules that way, we think it's important to order people into care.
Important to order people into care. But I don't have the ability to use the notwithstanding clause to override federal legislation. The federal government has something in the Constitution called disallowance. And what it is that if we tried to pass legislation, like we tried to once to set up our own currency, that is in their area of jurisdiction, they have the ability to disallow it. So what I'm using the Sovereignty Act for is the...
So yeah, it gets a little bit into the Sovereignty Act, where she basically wants to separate Alberta from the rest of Canada, to not let the federal government have any say on what happens in that province whatsoever. Even wants her own currency in that province. But, if the federal government comes in and says anything, they want to be able to say, nuh-uh, we aren't going to do it. But let's get back to the Compassionate Care Act. Teamsters serve CN Rail with Monday strike notice. That was about the story earlier. So, Smith says Compassionate Intervention Act is a last resort in Alberta. And this is from last year, so April 24th, 2023. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said the proposed Compassionate Intervention Act is a last resort if the province exhausts all other options to help those struggling with addictions. The act, first reported by the Globe and Mail on April 18th, would give police and family members or legal guardians of drug users the ability to refer adults and youth into involuntary treatment if they pose a risk to themselves and others. And who gets to determine that? Because involuntary treatment, that helps all the time. That's how it happens. Yeah, you just force people into these centers, traumatize them, remove them from their environments and force them into an unfamiliar place. And that will help. Yep, that's what you need to do. Just do like a little conversion therapy there. The Globe and Mail also reported the government is expected to introduce the bill later this year. The policy, the first of its kind in Canada if passed, is part of the United Conservative Government's model of recovery and treatment while stripping down harm reduction resources like supervised consumption sites, SCS. So, we're going to force people into treatment, but we're also going to get rid of supervised consumption sites. Yeah, intervention would be forced, but treatment is voluntary, she said, citing Portugal as an example of the successful model. Yeah, we're going to forcefully put you in a treatment center, but then after that, if you don't get better, well, oh well. It's not just Alberta. We also have the serfs. I know this is near and dear to Lance for personal reasons. And he says safe supply and overdose prevention kits have saved thousands of lives. The data is very clear on this. You sick freaks just want to make poverty porn and scare people into thinking it's not your horrible policies exacerbate the problem and get more people killed. And this is from the Conservative Party of BC will end David Eby's deadly drug experiment. We will fund treatment and help British Columbia recover with common sense plan. Similar to what Ontario is doing, no doubt, to just get rid of those safe consumption sites.
When Dr. Henry gives us advice, we follow that advice.
I support legalization and regulation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Drugs.
Dr. Henry recommending expanding access to
dangerous music in the background with gritty footage, making it look like it's from a struggling TV from long ago.
Drugs outside of the healthcare system,
including broadening the availability.
This is like a really bad movie trailer.
And types of drugs that can be prescribed, like smokable fentanyl.
I don't know how much of that I can actually show on YouTube, so let's go here. So this is somebody who's actually, whose life was saved because of these sites. So Guy Felicia, I guess, trusted harm reduction and recovery expert, inspirational speaker, sharing my story of overcoming addiction, mental health, and homelessness. And this was back in July 25th of 2020. Not bad for a guy who had to brought back to life 6 times and struggled with homelessness and addiction for decades in DTS. I wouldn't be alive today without harm reduction, and I wouldn't have the life I have today without my recovery. And there he is with his family, and he's saying, in response to all that's happening here, I wouldn't be here without supervised consumption services. Neither would my kids. How many future families like mine wouldn't be a reality because of the Ontario government Sylvia Jones Doug Ford announcement today to close 10 out of 17 supervised consumption sites. Apparently he did it for the children. Doesn't look like it from where I'm standing. Yeah. He's an example of what happens. 6 times, he said. He had to be brought back to life. Because it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get better overnight. You don't, treatment, no treatment just magically works. It takes time and effort and energy and different tactics. And I speak from this from a mental health perspective of dealing with my own mental health issues. There is no magical cure out there for people when it comes to mental health, when it comes to addiction, and addiction is a mental health issue. But he wouldn't be here. His family wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the services these sites provide. And Doug Ford is going to get rid of them. People are going to die from this. The situation is going to get worse. There's going to be more needles, more diseases being spread, more people in despair. And this is on top of like everything else I've been reporting on this channel, the amount of people who have become unhoused under him, the amount of people without family doctors. Like, A lot of these programs you get referred into, you need a family doctor for that. Like, he's making treatment impossible and then blaming people for being ill in the first place when, you know, the lives that they have in this province have just gone to shit. A lot of what because of what Doug Ford has done. It is disgusting that he's allowed to be getting away with this over and over again. It's just, yeah, people are going to die because of this. This. I don't know what more can be said about it. Oh, it's just so frustrating that more people aren't calling him out, that the reporters aren't calling him out. You know, point to these endless supply of drugs from Justin Trudeau's federal government. Is it Justin Trudeau himself handing them out? Is that it? You go trick-or-treating at his place and he just dumps drugs into your bag? Be specific with it. Where are people getting this endless supply of drugs? And can you let me know where that is? Because I have medications I could use an endless supply of. But that is that. Yeah, so those are the stories I wanted to cover today. Let's check the Sandbox. I definitely think I'm coming down with something. I'll check for a COVID test again tomorrow, but the one I took earlier today was negative. I'm so susceptible to bugs that go around. Let's see. Having to go way back to find comments I've already read. People have been busy in the Sandbox. That's good. Ah, this is as high up as I can scroll. And BKK says, so he's seen this shit up close and personal, yet he has no empathy for other struggling addicts. What a clown. Yeah. That is Doug Ford and his brother. The crack smoking mayor of Toronto. He was big into drugs, and they know the devastation that this can cause firsthand, and he's doing everything to make it worse. BKK also saying that poor mother about her son who would have been 35 had he been able to go to one of these sites and have his drugs tested to make sure that there weren't harmful elements to them. Grand Theft Autobot, yeah, because it's so easy to quit cold turkey. And I've known other people who've gotten over like alcohol addictions and stuff like that, and to go cold turkey, it can actually kill you depending on how bad your addiction is. To just stop, it can kill you. It can put your body into such a state of shock that you die. Soul Life. Ooh, Canadian sober living is different if they distribute methadone. I'm pretty sure methadone disqualifies you from sober living here. You can't do energy drinks, FFS. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you're doing methadone, you wouldn't be allowed to go into those heart hubs either. My dogs are goth. Why do conservatives always think they know more than doctors and professionals? BKK, we have a huge opioid crisis in my state. Used to have pill mills on every corner, but our elected officials have made it exceptionally more difficult to get opioid treatment by not allowing. People have friends, family with substance abuse issues. Whether people realize this or not, people should be alarmed by this. Tamara Chance, greetings from Pacific, California. Pacific, California. Greetings from southwestern Ontario. McClarity, Carlton Martin. BC Clarity. There is no place to pee for the general public who used to pee between the two buildings of me. Things are getting urbanized stat. Porta potty is in the vacant lot with me. Yeah, they keep on shutting down like where people can just go, like unhoused people where they can go to use a restroom and things of that sort. Like a lot of people were up in arms with these unhoused encampments, like, oh no, people are doing drugs there. Oh no. Where else are they going to use them? Would you rather they just walk in over to the kids' playground and use the drugs there instead? Or is it better for them to use them in the encampment where they have, supports nearby, friends nearby, potentially with naloxone kits, to help them in case something goes wrong? But instead, they want these people to be in isolated, far off, dangerous places to do their drugs where nobody will be able to help them should something go wrong. Let's see. Oh, did I get Raiders? Well, welcome, Raiders. Oh, welcome, Galactic News Network Raiders. Welcome to the Sandbox. Bad lefty, hypocrite. That checks out, yeah. Just, it's so frustrating how he's expanding alcohol to like convenience stores and stuff. And for people who are outside of Ontario, that's a new thing. It used to be only the LCBO, the liquor store and beer stores, some wineries, some craft beer places, and bars were the only place you could get alcohol. But now, convenience stores, you can get drunk at the 7-Eleven because they're going to be offering a place where you can sit down and booze up. Many of those will be near schools, and having people coming out of those drunk when the school bell rings and kids get let out of school. What could go wrong there? Jules T, do they have zoning laws in Canada too? Just fucking crazy. Yes, there's lots of zoning laws here that make it more difficult to find places to put in safe consumption services. Soul Life on-site showers. Whoa, fancy. I know, like, if you're going to take them away from public, isolate them. Yeah. Showers. Yeah? Like, of course. What, is there going to be food there too? Grand Theft Autobot, mental health care is also not covered. Last time I checked, it is not covered under Canada's universal health care. You have to rely on funding and programs that may or may not be available and waitlist, and you can't just go anywhere to get help, and depending on your level of crisis, because there's been times when I've had extreme incidences of not wanting to be alive. And then it was on me to try to find help. And some of the places that I was pointed to for counseling rejected me because I was in crisis. And they don't deal with that sort of thing. They just deal with people who are maybe going through a breakup or need a new job. But when you're in that level of crisis, there's very few places you can actually go to get the help you need. We have a new phone number, 988 in Canada, that you can call anytime if you're in that type of crisis, but it can help in a moment, but it doesn't help the underlying problems. Sorry. Definitely coming down with something. But I'll try to work and get some more videos clipped this weekend. I have my drawing that I want to work on. There's the writing that I was super excited about that I'm not so excited about anymore because I got some really, really horrible feedback on it. On the thing that I have just been beaming about on here when I've talked about it. Just really bad feedback on it, and kind of hurt a lot. So struggling to work on that. I don't get it. When I left, she seemed happy. My dogs are goth. How dare you use fact on Dove Ford, Sandy? Mm-hmm. I don't know where the beginning is, but it sounds like there was something really bad that happened. Let's see if I can backtrack. Okay, unfortunately, I don't know the context, but it sounds like Afro Phoenix has been through something pretty bad right now. So, no, you have our support as much as we can. I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but it sounds pretty devastating. Let's see. My dogs are goth. The thing is, conservatives peeled back proper health care for years. Now they're saying, oh, it's failing. Let's go private. Well, benefiting fat cats. Yep. Grand Theft Autobot, this is your brain. This is your brain. 2 slices of bacon and a glass of OJ. Remote of OJ missing. Oops, it jumped. Ah, where was I? I think I need to be wrapping things up. Okay. For people who are still on the hostile fart sauna, please know I have a new handle. So my old handle is still active, of course, but I now have LeftoftheBox for my channel content, and same on Blue Sky. So please go follow those as well, so I can eventually move all of that over. You can check out my art. Got all of this. Any help with Frodo's vet bills are still appreciated because they're ongoing. But he's doing well right now, so knock on wood, he stays like that. But I do have some other expenses coming in this time of year that I could really, really use some help with. So if you can, please become a patron. That's one of the more reliable ways that you can help out if you have the money. You know, do what you can when you can. Like, sharing, subscribing, encouraging other people to watch my videos, commenting under the video clips, watching the video clips, all of that helps too in the algorithms. My goal is to get all the video clips at least to over 100 views, and there's a couple struggling right now. So if after this, if everyone could go watch it, you don't have to watch it. You just have to click on it. You can mute it and watch a different tab. But to help boost those to get them over 100 views, that would be greatly appreciated. But those are all things that don't cost anything. If you do have the money to spare, I appreciate it. Any money sent to me through the PayPal link in the description box below, or through an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail, that goes specifically towards helping with the vet care. Another way you can help if you have a one-time ability to do that is with my Amazon wish list. You can purchase anything off of there, would be of great benefit. But yeah, follow me on these platforms. I just want to thank everyone who has been able to help me out with the wish list, by becoming a patron, by, you know, one-time boost, super chats, all of that. Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. Like, you know, I don't get enough on ODSP to get by, so it may seem like a little bit to you, but it makes a big difference to me. And I do really, really appreciate it. And thank you to the mods for keeping the sandbox clean. And yeah, hopefully I have a little bit more energy to talk next time. Is there anything else I need to say? I don't think so. So before I think of anything else to say, let's do this. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.